The boardroom was silent, the kind of silence that makes every small sound echo louder than it should. The CEO sat at the head of the long, polished table, his eyes fixed on the presentation, his team waiting nervously for his reaction. No one noticed the janitor in the corner, quietly mopping the floor, head down as though he wished to be invisible. He was always there, always quiet, always overlooked. But that day, something unusual happened. As the meeting dragged on, the janitor bent closer to his mop bucket and whispered something softly in Mandarin. It was just a few words, almost like a breath, not meant for anyone to hear. Yet the sound carried further than he thought. A chair scraped against the floor as the CEO's daughter, who had been sitting in on the meeting, lifted her head sharply. Her eyes widened, and she answered back in the same language. The CEO froze. The room seemed to stop breathing. The board members glanced at one another, confused, not understanding the sudden exchange. To them, it was just an odd interruption. But to the CEO, the words spoken by the shy janitor and his daughter carried a weight that no one else in the room could understand. His daughter's voice trembled slightly, but her gaze was steady as she responded, as though she had been waiting for this moment all along. The janitor looked startled, as if he had revealed a secret he had hidden for years. The CEO, a man known for his control and composure, suddenly seemed lost for words. The air grew heavy, filled with questions no one dared to ask. Who was this quiet janitor really? And what did his daughter's response mean? The boardroom that had once felt ordinary now held a mystery no one could ignore. And in that fragile pause, it became clear something hidden was about to come to light. And nothing in that company would ever be the same again. The janitor's hands tightened around the mop handle. His knuckles white, but he didn't look away from the young woman who had spoken. The CEO's daughter, usually quiet and reserved in these meetings, seemed different now. There was a strange recognition in her eyes, as if the words she had spoken had unlocked a memory she couldn't fully place. The board members shifted uncomfortably, sensing tension but not daring to interrupt. The CEO cleared his throat, but no sound followed. For the first time in years, his authority felt shaken. The janitor lowered his gaze, as if regretting the whisper that had slipped from his lips. Yet his silence only made the moment heavier. No one in the room knew much about him. He was the man who came in before sunrise, who kept the building spotless, who never joined in conversations or asked for attention. Some thought he didn't speak English well, while others assumed he simply preferred to be invisible. But now, with a single whisper in Mandarin, he had drawn every eye in the room to him. The CEO's daughter tilted her head slightly, as if she wanted to say more, but she hesitated. Her father finally spoke, his voice sharp but unsteady, asking the janitor to repeat what he had said. The janitor didn't answer. Instead, he stood still, his expression unreadable, as if caught between fear and determination. The silence stretched, and the CEO's fists clenched against the table. No one else understood what was unfolding, but it was clear this was no random coincidence. Why had the janitor spoken in Mandarin at that exact moment? And why did the CEO's daughter respond with such familiarity? The unanswered questions hung in the air, pressing down on everyone, hinting at secrets that had been hidden for far too long. The CEO leaned back slowly in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes never leaving the janitor. To the rest of the board, it looked like irritation, but to his daughter, it was something else. She had seen that look before when her father was cornered, when something from the past came too close to the present. She glanced between the two men, trying to connect the pieces in her mind. But the tension gave her no space to breathe. The janitor finally lifted his head, and for the first time, his eyes locked directly with the CEO's. It was a steady look, quiet but powerful, like he had been waiting years for this moment. Yet he still said nothing. The weight of his silence seemed louder than words, as though he was daring the CEO to speak first. The daughter, caught between them, felt like she had stepped into a conversation that began long before she was born. Whispers spread among the board members. Some wondered if this was about a business deal, maybe a foreign partnership that had gone wrong. Others thought it was just a strange coincidence. But one older executive who had been with the company since its early days stared at the janitor with a furrowed brow, as if recognizing something long buried. Outside the glass walls of the boardroom, employees passed by, unaware of the storm brewing inside. To them, the janitor was invisible as always, just a figure in a uniform. But inside, every second deepened the mystery. The CEO's daughter leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but clear, asking the janitor where he had learned those words. The question hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. The janitor opened his mouth, but before he could answer, the CEO cut in sharply, dismissing the meeting. His tone was final, but his eyes betrayed urgency. He didn't want the next words spoken aloud, not here, not in front of everyone. That choice only deepened the silence, leaving the room full of people with the sense that something far greater was hiding just beneath the surface. The boardroom emptied slowly, chairs scraping against the floor as executives filed out, whispering to one another, confused and uneasy. But the janitor stayed where he was, standing by his mop, his face calm though his eyes carried something deeper. The CEO's daughter hesitated at the door, torn between following her father or staying behind. In that pause, the janitor finally spoke again, his voice low but steady, this time in English. He asked her if she really knew who her father was. Her breath caught in her chest. The question was simple, but the way he said it sent a shiver through her. She looked at him carefully, noticing details she had never paid attention to before: the careful posture, the faint scar along his hand, the way his Mandarin earlier had sounded precise and practiced, not accidental. Nothing about him seemed ordinary anymore. The CEO stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline, his reflection faint in the glass. He didn't turn around, but his silence confirmed more than words ever could. The daughter took a step forward, her heart pounding, asking the janitor what he meant. The janitor's eyes flickered toward the CEO before he answered. As though weighing the cost of saying too much, the air grew thick with tension. The daughter's voice grew stronger, demanding to know the truth. While her father finally spun around, his voice sharp, telling her to stop. His tone was harsher than she had ever heard, and it only fueled her fear that something was being hidden from her. The janitor's calmness contrasted sharply with the CEO's rising anger. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He simply looked at the young woman with quiet resolve and said there were things she deserved to know, things that had been kept from her for years. The CEO stepped forward quickly, cutting him off, his face pale but eyes blazing. For a moment, no one moved. The daughter stood between them, her father on one side, the janitor on the other. The truth balanced on the edge of revelation. The room felt smaller, the silence heavier, as if everything was leading to a single moment that could not be undone. The daughter's pulse raced as she looked from the janitor to her father, both men locked in a silent battle of wills. Just when she thought the tension could not rise any higher, the janitor took a slow breath and revealed something that made her knees weaken. He mentioned her late mother's name. The sound of it, spoken in perfect Mandarin, cut through the room like a blade. Her father's face went rigid, every trace of color draining away. He stepped closer, his voice trembling as he ordered the janitor to stop speaking. But it was too late. The daughter's mind was spinning. How could this quiet janitor, who had always blended into the background, know her mother's name, let alone say it in such a personal, familiar tone? She stared at him, her voice breaking as she asked how he knew her. The janitor didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at her father with an expression that carried both sorrow and defiance. The silence that followed felt heavier than words, and for the first time, the daughter wondered if the man she thought she knew as her father had built his success on more than hard work and determination. The CEO finally snapped. His voice raised, telling her not to listen, claiming the janitor was just trying to cause trouble. But even as he spoke, his eyes betrayed him. The daughter caught the flicker of recognition, of guilt, and she could no longer ignore it. The boardroom, once a place of power and control, had turned into a stage where secrets clawed their way to the surface. The janitor set the mop aside, his posture straightening, no longer the invisible man he had been for years. He said only one sentence, calm and deliberate, that the daughter deserved to know why her mother had really disappeared from her life. The words hung in the air, and the world around them seemed to close in. The truth pressing forward, unstoppable. The daughter's chest tightened as the janitor's words echoed in her mind. She turned toward her father, searching his face for denial, for reassurance, but instead she found silence. His eyes lowered, his fists clenched at his sides. That silence was louder than any confession. She stepped back, her voice trembling as she demanded to know the truth. Finally, the CEO spoke. His war.